right, so now that we've printed the web print job ticket and we also printed the order to the Xerox Free Flow, you'll notice the name of the system in the top left hand corner. And in the top center, the very first line of text, it says that this is the Xerox D95 copier. This is the black and white copy machine. So we'll go down to the two orders that are in the job production queue. Nothing is paused here. And then held by queue are two orders. So whenever you print an order, either to the black and white copier or to the color copier, it does not immediately print. Instead, it is held by the queue. Anytime you see the job name as rendering window, that tells you that that is a job ticket. It doesn't tell you which one, but it does let you know that's a job ticket. In order to print it, you'll simply right click it and hit release. And you can probably hear the background noise, but that is going to be printed at this time. The next step is to apply the specifications for the actual print order. If you remember the order name, it's order underscore 481219, and that was for Julie Lang's FDA order. To access the properties, we will double click, and I will zoom back out. After you double click on the order number, you will see the job properties tab. The default tab would be whichever one you last used, even if it was for a previous order. So I'll go through all of them real quick. The first one is settings. If you want to print a specific page range, you can do that from here. Otherwise, the default would be print all pages. The print destination, job progress, administrative pages, all of those are just for informational purposes. You wouldn't really use any of those. The only thing that you would use under the settings tab would be the print to pages to print, if you were not printing all pages. The second tab will tell you what type of paper stock it was going to be printed on. So use ready is the default unless you have to specifically change the paper tray to a different stock. It will automatically print from tray 6 or tray 7 on the regular 8.5 by 11 standard paper. Output. For this particular order, we will use the output. The first tab is basic settings. You get to select if you want the order single-sided or double-sided, and if it's double-sided, if the second side should be rotated. You can also choose your correlation. By default, it will be set to one-sided correlated, and in this case, that would be the same. The second tab deals with stapling and finishing options. This particular order, remember the customer wanted the order to be 3-hole punch, so we'll go to 3-hole punch. And the picture on the left will show which one we need, which is 3 holes, portrait left. Again, everything else on this particular tab would be default selections. There's no need to change it. The next one is slip sheets. You can enable slip sheets here. Remember, the customer did want a slip sheet. However, if you enable slip sheet here, it will only place one sheet of paper at the end of every set. So in other words, if you were to print 3 copies of this PDF, after each set, after each copy, you would get a slip sheet. And that's not what the customer wanted. So we'll leave that as disabled, just telling you what that's for. Same thing with sample, layout, and subset. All of these options are going to be default selected, so you don't have to change them. Won't go over them at this time because they're not applicable to this order. For the sake of time, we'll stick with this order. Image quality on 1200 DPI by default, you would leave that the same. Image editing, that would be the same. This just shows the margin. So the Y, if we were to move this a little bit, you should be able to see the difference. So that moved the image up. So the Y-axis will control if the image goes up on the page or down on the page. And X, of course, would control if the image is slid to the left or to the right of the page. We're going to leave that where it was at a negative 0.10. Rotation, we'll leave that at 0, which means the image is not being rotated and there's nothing special for the background form. So here's what we do need to change. Under Special Pages, front cover would be if we wanted to insert a pre-printed or even a printed front cover only. Back cover obviously would be the same, but for a black cover. Inserts would be if you wanted to insert a sheet of paper at some point in the job that was not in the file already. So if your file had 100 pages and you wanted to insert a sheet of paper between the 10th and the 11th page, you would click on Insert and put the page range and it will grab a sheet of paper. We don't need either of those. What we need is actually an exception page. So if you will recall, Julie wanted slip sheets, blue slip sheets, where there were white pages in the document. Those white pages were found on pages 5 and 11. So we'll enter in 5, 11. There's no reason to change the image edit, which is the margins. The output is going to be the same, single-sided, no need to change that. And what we will change is the type of paper that it's going to be printed on. User ready is the normal stock, and what we're looking for is the loaded stock of blue paper. So we'll select that, which tells us that pages 5 and 11 will print from the tray that has the blue 8.5 by 11 paper in it. And then click Add Exception. Once you've clicked Add Exception, the page will not disappear. What will disappear is the page numbers that were previously in the exception page range. Now here comes the tricky part. Now we're going to enter in the tab information. There are 2 tabs. The first bank tab was page 3. The second bank tab was page 14. This is very important. That's why you need to separate your tabs in bank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in sets of 5, because every first bank tab, the image edit will have to be changed. So the y-axis, instead of it being negative 0.10, will actually be period or 0.25. And then the x-axis from left to right will be period 50. What that does is shift the text on the tab over to the right more and also up a little bit to center the word on the actual tab. If you click center button, that will not work. So we actually have to specify for every first bank tab, you would go 0.25 on the y-axis and 0.50 on the x-axis. No need to remember this information. It will also be written in the Site Procedures Guide under the tab section. And for the stock, this is important. Remember, we changed the paper to the blue. It kept that setting. So we need to pull down the drop box, go to Loaded Stock, and select select 5 bank tab inserts. So that's tabs with 5 different spots, and OK. After you select the page or the type of paper that you want for page 3, there's no need to change anything else. So you'll change the image edit to adjust the margins and change stock to specify the type of paper the tab should be printed on, and then click Add Exception. Now this setting is saved just as the other one was. So for page 14, which is the second bank tab, we don't have to change anything on this paper as far as the paper goes. So we'll enter in the page number as 14. However, when we go to Image Edit, we do not need to change the y-axis, or do not need to leave it the same. We can put it at 0.00. There's no need to change the wording on the second bank tab. The same rule applies to the third bank tab and also the fourth bank tab. The fifth bank tab, however, the y-axis would be negative 0.25. So that one, the text would need to be shifted down, and the x-axis will stay the same. So I'll repeat that. Every first bank tab, the coordinates would be y period 25. On the x-axis, it would be 0.50. Every second, third, and fourth bank tab, the y-axis would be 0.00, and the x-axis would still be 0.50. And on every fifth bank tab, the y-axis would be negative 2.5, and the x-axis would be 0.50. And just in case you're unsure what the y-axis should look like on the fifth bank tab, I'll just input it for you. It would literally be the minus sign period 25, and that's it. I'll change it back so that I don't mess this one up. And then we click add exception. Excuse me. Oh, I'll hit close. I see behind there I've already added those pages. So on page 3 we have a tab. Page 5 and page 11 are blue pages, and page 14 is also a tab. So we've gotten all our exception pages entered. We'll double check the output. It is single-sided and it is 3-hole punched, and that's it. We can hit OK. Now, even after you hit OK, the order is still not being processed. It goes back to the hill queue, but all the settings have been saved. Excuse me. To print one copy, just as a proof to make sure everything is okay, you'll right-click and select proof. From there, it will say processing proof. Once it reaches a certain point, it'll move from that queue to the queue right above it, and it'll show active and printing. After that one has completed, it will still stay in the same, it will go back to the hill queue box, and it will have a check mark in this area saying that a proof has been printed. If you want to print the second copy or additional copies, you would simply right click and release if you only wanted one copy. If you wanted multiple copies, you can go back to properties, go up to quantity, change the number of additional copies that you need, and then select OK. After that, it would automatically close out. I have to do it manually since I didn't change anything. And then you would right click and hit release to print your additional copies. And that's all for this tutorial. There will be more, of course. Next up would be a tab only order. A tab that contains pages with only, an order, excuse me, that contains pages with only tabs. Thank you so much.